Hey guys, what is going on? Wally here, and in today's video we're going to take a look at some of the inverted Spire strike from a good friend of mine and fellow YouTuber, JayShockBlast. He was kind enough to gift me this footage, and I'm just going to give you sort of a basic lore overview of what I think is going to be happening, some of the new changes to Destiny 2, and some of the general gameplay vibes that I'm getting from it. Overall, from everything that I've seen, because again I haven't played this, looks good. It definitely feels like it is going to feel good, if that makes sense. I'm excited for it. Everything about the new Destiny 2 seems like a better version of Destiny 1, and everything that they've tried to expand on by putting in story into the game, by allowing you a little bit more customization options, all seem like it's really there. And I just have to say, in the general scope of things, the game looks much more pretty, much more vibrant. It's not as washed out as it once was. So I'm very excited for that. So at this point, we've been given a few key plot points that should be at least discussed. First, you're on Nessus. It's a Vex machine world seemingly overrun or modified by the Vex. Secondly, we meet Failsafe, which seems to have a very solid relationship with Commander Zavala. And finally, we see both that a Fallen House and the Cabal are battling it out. And this alone raises a few questions. Firstly, what Fallen House is that? Who are they led by and what are their motivations? And secondly, the Cabal have been talking about making seismic activity on the planet, across the entire planet. Back in Destiny 1, there was a couple cards, or at least some lore, that discussed their planet-busting, planet-devastating tactics. So this sort of fits in very well to their ability to mess with the sort of seismic activity of an entire planet. Now, the final question, at least in this intro sequence that I'd like to impose on you, is about Failsafe. Now, presumably, Failsafe was a shipboard AI of a colony ship during the Golden Age that has been retrofitted for us by Zavala. But most likely the Vanguard itself, because Zavala doesn't really have any backstory of that type of technological achievement. So it's most likely done by the Vanguard, someone within the Vanguard that is now being used directly by Zavala. Failsafe also talks about having several backdoors into the Vex's subsystems, or at least their battle network. It sort of gives it a very Cortana vibe to it from Halo 1, Halo 2, and Halo 3. So I'm very curious to see how they deploy these AIs and what their ultimate use is on the field. At this point in the footage, we see the first use of like an actual grenade launcher of Hawkeye design. Now, if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, please correct me in the comments. But speaking of weapon designs, I really do like the new direction they've gone with Destiny 2 for it. Weapons seem much more fluid and lightweight than some of their counterparts in Destiny 1. Now, that's entirely subjective, so it could really only be my opinion. And again, I've not played the game. But overall, I am curious to see what we're going to learn about the weapon foundries of the last city. How exactly are Guardians being supplied with arms and armor if the city stores have been seemingly cut off from Guardians? Will there be a new weapon foundries, or will the old ones live on through some ingenious creation at the farm? The economy and industry of the last city has always really interested me. We never really got to see that action in Destiny 1. And while we understood how some of it worked, typically through the modification of Glimmer and various resources like spin metal and so on, we never saw a weapon foundry in action. The second point I'd like to make here is the redesign, or at least update, to the enemy factions. The Dregs seem much more agile now than they ever were before, and just as deadly. The Cabal now seem to have multiple unit types, or more unit variety in general. And this is honestly a good thing. The Scions seem more decked out for sniper or long-range support configurations, and we see Centurions with jetpacks and flaming technology shielding. Overall, one of my biggest things that sort of killed the vibe for me at certain points was being so familiar with Destiny 1's creatures that you knew what you were getting every time you saw an outline of one. Now, while that most likely will become the case over long periods of play in Destiny 2, it will not be as immediate as it was in Destiny 1. So overall, a really good change to both the weapons and, of course, the enemy factions, at least from what we've seen so far. As we continue through the footage, we begin to understand that Nessus seems almost like a water world, with Vex spires protruding from it. It's really interesting to see this type of technology that we've previously seen on Mars and Venus in the past, but across an entire planet. The Vex themselves seem to have, or become, as terrifying as ever. The Praetorians now have this new beam void cannon, which both sounds dope and looks really freaking cool. But the ghost, your companion in this, states that the waterfalls aren't water, but actually Vex fluid or Vex milk, which we assume to be sort of the Vex fluid that occupies or is inside their metallic bodies. It's an interesting take as we begin to learn more about the Cabal's need for this world. We can assume that the Vex use Nessus for the same reasons. Much like our talk earlier about how the last city had weapon foundries. Perhaps the Cabal and Vex use these planetoids to create their vast arsenal and power their ships. Essentially, a planet-wide resource strip. Failsafe even comments on the, quote, recent chatter, unquote. It's very reminiscent of Cortana and her ability to read into enemy communications. Stating, quote, recent chatter suggests they want to build more guns, unquote. It's interesting, but a solid strategy, and this is speaking directly of the Vex drilling device. Why not utilize a solar system you're invading to fuel your war machine? It would be significantly difficult to transport such arms and armors and, of course, fuel across the galaxy. So perhaps the Cabal begin invasions and resource strips at the same time, both fueling one another. It's only an assumption, but it does suggest and reinforce that these factions aren't just creating their forces or weapons out of thin air, that there is a tangible economy, or at least the illusion of one, occurring in the background. Sort of creates a more in-depth game world, but also opens up the possibility of a Cabal weak point to be exploited. For example, say Vanguard Strike Team stop the Cabal mining efforts on Nessus. Doesn't that weaken their position and overall combat ability? It's something to think about, and I am curious to know what you may think as well. I want to make a quick point here. That drill is utterly massive. It really does showcase the scope of what you as Guardians would be dealing with and facing in Destiny 2. Now, the banter between you and your ghost, or at least your ghost talking to you, is entertaining, to say the least. I just hope it isn't always so lighthearted. I like the idea of the ghost representing the player character, so comedic relief isn't really the way I'd like to see every single mission done. Honestly, I preferred the dry narration of Peter Dinklage over the jovial Peter North, but I know that's only one man's opinion. We've reached the endpoint here, and we've run into Protheon, the modular mind. Sort of shares the same frame of body as Atheon did back in the Vault of Glass. And I'm really curious as to what a giant Vex mind is doing there and what its potentials really are. Is it one of the reasons the Cabal are drilling into the planet's core? Do they run into it by accident, unlocking this ancient Vex mind? In the beginning of this boss fight, before dropping into the boss room itself, there was a statuary that was the modular mind or something like it, and it sort of reinforces the whole worship / Vex religion theme that we've seen back in vanilla since the Black Garden. But I'm going to be honest though, this strike alone doesn't really explain much. It doesn't explain the Vex presence or the modular mind, and without Rimwork cards, the little banter between Failsafe and our ghost isn't inspiring a story beyond. Bad guys are here, shoot bad guys, great work. It's just one strike though, and I know we have no idea on what the story is before the strike or after it, but that's just what I pulled from it. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. It's very hard and it's almost unfair to base an opinion off the story off one strike alone, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm just giving you a very much case point response. But do you think that Bungie is going to live up to Destiny 1's in-depth story without the Grimoire cards being present for Destiny 2? Can the richness of the lore be injected and presented properly in Destiny 2? I'm going to wait to see the beta for myself on PC later next month, and I'll be on PS4 for the launch. If you guys want to add me, my gamer tag will be in the description down below, but it's pretty much just Sir Wallen, no space. As always, guys, I really appreciate the support. I cannot do this without you. I'm really looking forward to playing Destiny 2 with some of you, and of course, I'm looking forward to creating more lore videos for you all. Love you guys. Peace. Hey everyone, Wally here. If you'd like to support the channel further, please feel free to check out the script link, my Patreon, and the new apparel in the Spreadshirt shop, all linked down below. If you want to join the conversation on our Discord server, we allow everyone in. Like the video if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe for more.